Funerals I really love to go to is when they acknowledge that there was hard things too. And from the hard things came opportunities for healing, for massive up levels in growth and understanding. And in the funeral I went to recently, they really highlighted that it wasn't always roses. Welcome to the Story of Spirit podcast, where practical spirituality meets real life. Hi, I'm your host, Sheetal Story. I'm a psychic medium, grief support counselor, professional astrologer, and a human design reader, and of course, a law of attraction master coach. With my unique blend of spiritual and practical tools, I am here to help you align with your soul-led purpose and ignite a life that sets your soul on fire. In this podcast, we are going to explore the principles of energy, astrology, spirituality, and psychology to help you heal your grief and create an aligned life and business from the inside out. Whether you are looking to deepen your intuition, understand your cosmic design, or transform your business, this podcast is for you. Join me each week for insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories that will guide you on your journey to living your very best life. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Sheetal Story or wherever you listen to this podcast. Let's dive in and start this transformative journey together. Welcome to the Story of Spirit podcast. Today, we're going to talk about funerals as a psychic. And this topic came about because I recently attended a funeral for a dear friend's family member. And this topic actually downloaded as I was getting ready for the funeral. So I wrote out all my bullet points and things to get to, I wanted to talk about, because I don't think, I live in this bubble as a psychic medium. I really live my life in a spiritual way. I'm very aware of energy and what things are happening around me. And at a funeral, it's no different, right? I've attended many funerals. I actually really enjoy funerals. And I hope that doesn't come across as morbid or dark. It's because I see it from the place of spirit. I see it from the place of your loved ones. I always see spirit there. All of your family comes, to funerals. Everyone who has passed away and everyone who is present as well comes to the funeral. And it's like a wedding. The way that I describe it, it's like it's like a wedding. If you've ever been married or not, I'm going to describe how I see weddings and how I experience my own wedding. True story, I actually had two weddings. I had a Hindu ceremony, an East Indian wedding, and I had a United Church ceremony. So I had two dresses, I had two hairstyles. We did it on 2 days, and we actually got married over 2 days, but it was like a week-long festivities, such as life in the East Indian community and culture, and it was so much fun. In a wedding, everybody comes to celebrate the union of the bride and groom, and they tell stories about you, and they bring you gifts, and everyone is there celebrating, and it's a joyful, really coming together and a supportive union as these two people are now embarking on this life together. And funerals are very similar to that in terms of that now families coming together, not for a joyful occasion, although in the Irish they do wakes and they celebrate life, or celebrations of life are meant to be sort of looking at the life from a very positive and beautiful lens. But there's also grief. And grief requires community. Grief requires connection. And so this coming together when everyone's sharing stories, and it's very, so when we take our last breath, I'm gonna walk you through from a spirit perspective what happened, what they have shown me. Okay. I obviously can't say it firsthand. I'll let you know, when I die and come back, I'll come through a medium to a podcast. I don't know. But this is what they've shown me. So you take your last breath, and before you even take your last breath, you've got loved ones on the other side who are already passed, on, who are dead, who are there to see you across. They're waiting for you. They can tell when your life force is starting to transition. Your vitality is becoming more energy than physicality. So you are becoming more light, if you will. And when you take your last breath, you are no longer tethered to your body, and you step fully into the world of energy and you emerge as a spirit. And now that integration back into spirit takes some time. It depends on how spiritual you were. What did you believe about the afterlife? What did you believe about yourself? Are you worthy of transitioning? There's some cultures or religions around the world that you have to have last rites to be able to transition to spirit. So if you didn't get last rites, then maybe there could be a little resistance there, and your family will help you. You transition through taking yourself to the spirit world or death by completing suicide, then there could be then a spirit team on the other side that helps you to integrate and remember that you are light, that you are projecting yourself into physicality, that it wasn't real. This isn't your story. This isn't your identity. All these things that you believed about yourself are not true. And you're becoming more and more light, or you're becoming more and more high vibration, if you will, on the other side as you release the vibration of the earth and this physical life that you had that isn't, it's like a play. It's real. It's real for us. Our physical body, does go through things, and our nervous system can feel them. But in spirit, this is just another lifetime, but not just another lifetime, because every lifetime is precious. It is carefully thought out. There's gifts and talents, the way that you look, your entrance into this lifetime, everything is orchestrated. And then you have free will when you're in it to do the things that your spirit wants to experience. So you have these checkpoints that you go through. So we've talked about these in previous episodes. And so then you've taken your last breath, and now you're going through a recollection, if you will, or a soul. The word is not coming to my mind, but you're going back over a review, a soul review. You're going back over everything that has happened in your life. And now you go through it from the other person's eyes, especially in situations where you were not so nice, where you didn't make great choices. And even if you didn't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, you will feel what that felt like, because those life lessons either didn't complete or completed, and you understood that the role that you played in it. And again, you would have agreed to play that role in someone else's story as someone plays those roles in your story. So these are all agreements and contracts that are created ahead of time. This is what spirit has shown me, and my understanding of it is. Of course, you can take this with a grain of salt, because I obviously have not died and I can't come back and go, this is how it is, people. But this is my understanding, from understanding philosophy, from mediumship, from studying with mentors, from talking this to a lot of dead people. This is what's come forward. So as you do this soul review and you experience the unfinished life lessons and the life lessons and your growth, you now then are, on the other side, you're with your family there. You also have your guides with you, and you've come into an understanding of this lifetime. Now, as the funeral takes part, and time on the other side is different than time here, right? Here it's just a blip on the radar. There, time is infinite, and they can be in any place. So they're not bound in their dimension. So in the 3D dimension, we're in 3D, we've got length, width, and height, right? But there's an energetic dimension that we are not aware of, but we do walk in that dimension. You can't see it with our human eyes, right? So that literally, heaven is right here. They're right here with us, right? At night you might feel them, or you might see sort of shadows on the walls, and that's actually just energy of people that have come before or in another dimension. There's, nothing nefarious about that. It's just that they're there, and you're like, get out, that's my house. You can actually say that. So it is that you walk in the world of energy and physicality. You are so powerful, and you can actually command both worlds with your energy. So now that you are energy without a body, you can call that a ghost, you can call it spirit. You're now spirit. Now you get to see everything that's happening. So sometimes you stay in the room, sometimes you depart, and you're going through your soul review, you're seeing family, or you're traveling around the world and seeing all the people that are hearing about you, or you want to go and give messages to people who might be receiving the news that you are now taking your last breath. So I've had a number of clients report, and spirit has shown me that they're right beside them and they received the phone call. And I said, he's saying he stood beside you as you received the phone call of his passing. She's like, oh my God, I knew it. I could feel him in the room with me. And then I could feel his arms around me as I started to cry. But I knew he had died. I just knew it. I said, because his soul wanted to come and tell you himself. And he's showing me that. And how would I know that? I've actually given that reading before. So it is, you can be anywhere, and you can project, into any place because you're energy. So they then go around and will kind of say goodbye or try to be there for people that they are going to take the news really harshly. So that is, what spirit does after they take their last breath. So also gone through that soul review, reunited with loved ones on the other side, visiting the people around the world that are hearing about their passing, and then the funeral. Right. The funeral is usually within 1 to 2 weeks. Of course, that can be a little bit anomalous depending on the time. Everyone's getting ready for this funeral. And what I know from grief support counseling is that the funeral is like you're still in service. You're almost like operating in shock if you or the person, your loved one has passed away. So you're trying to find a caterer, you're trying to find hall, you're organizing with the funeral services and depending on how they passed away, maybe with the coroner's office. And then you're trying to organize all these things and then payments. Oh my God, it is so expensive to die. If you don't have death insurance or plots and stuff, paid for, please go do that. It is thousands of dollars. It's ridiculous. Even a cremation is like $10,000. So it is something you must plan for before you pass away. And speaking of planning for, right? So sometimes in the will or in conversations, depending on if the person kind of had planned their passing or maybe had not, there's no idea for that, but they might have a way that they wanted to go. Right. And we have people in our family that had these very elaborate plans that they wanted for us when they passed away to honor them. And then the living altered it. But what I'll say to you, or we've had people in the family say, "Don't have a funeral for me, don't mourn me, just go on with your life." And I'm like, "Oh, isn't that lovely? We don't have any chance to come together and talk about you, to mourn you, to come together, because as if that's going to heal everything." It actually makes me a little angry when that happens. You can hear the fire in my heart because funerals are for the living. Funerals are for the living. They're here to help us come together, to talk, to heal, to feel that connectedness. Because what happens in death is a lot of healing, a lot of healing, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of coming together. Why were we ever so petty? It reminds you of your earthliness, it reminds you of your mortality. You don't have forever. Funerals can really shake something loose in you because they're meant to, right? This is a time, death is not accidental. Right. When we think about this as a psychic medium and as a grief support counselor, I really am in awe of the brilliance of death because it is meant to ripple out into the world and change everyone who touches it. Everyone who touches it is changed by death. And so it's meant to shake something loose from you. It's meant to make you realize mortality. It's make you meant to realize this petty bickering that you had with your sibling. It really, like, what are we even talking about anymore? Is this even important anymore? Right? It really sifts out anything that is frivolous, silly, just silliness. It can as well exacerbate issues within the family. So I had a client once who they were going through a nasty contesting of the will from her siblings because the parents had given the siblings the money in life because they had really struggled a lot in their life, so they had given them tens of thousands of dollars, whereas the executor of the will, who was my client, had never taken a penny. She was very well to do. She had done a good job of her career. She had married very well. She was widowed and so inherited a very large sum of money. And so they never really felt like they had to give her anything. So in life, they didn't give her anything, but in death, everything that they gave to the siblings, they gave to her in the will. So it was even Steven in their mind, right? It was a three-way split based on the ledger of everything they had given away in life. And the siblings lost their mind because the house, which was valued at $1 million, after all the taxes and everything would have been paid, she would have got the amount that the siblings got in life. And they did not see that or like that. So they took her to court. And it was hashed through the court on purpose to dwindle down any money she would have received from the estate. So they kept, they would be a verdict and then they would appeal the verdict and then they would need a new lawyer because they would fire the old one. Like they purposely drew it out. And it was so awful because she was just like, I don't even care anymore. And I'm like, this is sad. Like they need grief counseling. They need to heal their heart because they're trying to take it out on you. You're not going to get a penny of mom and dad's money, even though they did. And she tried to talk to them and they just were not able to hear it. And so the funeral actually brought out a lot of jealousy because she was the oldest. She was, again, well to do, had made good decisions in her life. So the funeral and the death of their parents really brought forth this raging jealousy and this fear of not being enough that they just projected onto her. And, will that soul contract conclude in this lifetime? I don't think so. I think it will continue on to the next lifetime, which is what happens when we don't actually take accountability and understand what's happening underneath. And, it's not always, maybe her soul contract is to cut them out and to say, I'm never going to speak to you again. But I don't think so because there's no neutrality. For her, she was just so hurt that these are her siblings that she grew up with, that she loved so dearly, that she took care of them because there was a big age gap. And so the funeral actually brought out more of this raging jealousy. There was a big fight at the funeral. And so not all funerals bring out good things, is what I want you to hear from that. And there's opportunity for good things always in a funeral, for reconciliation, for coming together, for inclusivity. And sometimes it's hard because secrets come out at funerals. Acknowledging that this the entire lifetime that this person lived, warts and all. We are not angels. We come here with egos. We make bad choices sometimes. So in the recollection of your life, there's also this sort of going, "Wow, there was times that it was really difficult." Yeah, and you don't often hear that in funerals, which I think is interesting because it's almost like this whitewashing for everybody to see the best parts, of everything. But I think we do the funerals I really love to go to is when they acknowledge that there was hard things too. And from the hard things came opportunities for healing, for massive up levels and growth and understanding. And in the funeral I went to recently, they really highlighted that it wasn't always roses, and here are the good parts of this person, but here are the parts that were a little bit rough as well. And the people in the audience were like, "Oh yeah, mhm, we know," like so. It it was honest, it was truthful, and I saw as a medium, I know that your loved ones always attend their own funeral. They're always there. That's like a wedding, right? They're there attending and listening, and oftentimes they're surprised at how many people come, that they're shocked that they, like, didn't realize how many people would actually come for their funeral, that they want to help everyone to heal as well because they don't want you to be sad. They love you, they're still there, they're not gone, but of course, physically, we can't feel them. And there's a grief in that. We can't get their hugs, we can't talk to them on the telephone, we can't hold their hand, we can't call them when we're having a rough time, we can't go to their house when we need them. It's really, really tough. That grief is real. It's absolutely real. And my hope in recording this episode is that you can see the funeral from a different perspective. That, funerals are for the living, that they do attend their funeral. I also notice when anyone goes up to the podium to speak about them, they will stand beside them and they will hold their hand or they will put their hand on your shoulder to give you energy to help you through if you're having a hard time. I always see that energy transfer from spirit to you because they want to help you so much. And sometimes it's from the person whose funeral it is, and sometimes it's from another loved one, a grandparent or someone else that might be in spirit for you. So they're at their own funerals and they're listening to the stories that you're telling them. They feel your grief. They can also feel when you laugh. They they don't want you to feel sad about their passing because for them this is a transition point. This is like a graduation. They've now moved into the world of spirit, and to see, their life review and to see all the life lessons that they sort of did well with, but also not do well with, they want to help that because that's the only friction in spirit. Now, there's no friction between spirits and spirit because they're now realize that we're all the same. We're all part of humanity, where there's nothing really separating us, but we take on these egos and identities here in the physical world so that we can have that friction, that we can learn about ourselves, and that we can go through the contrast to get clarity and to come back into union with our true self, which is our soul, and we are love incarnate. So when they're in spirit, the only friction or the only life lessons to heal are here in the physical world with those that they left behind and they didn't complete. So if there was something left unsaid and you're speaking to them, or oftentimes spirit will tell me that, you had some special words for them at their casket, if they had an open casket, or yeah, at the time of the burial, or you threw something into, if they were buried in the ground, you threw something in the ground with them, or you left something in their casket. Sometimes spirit will say, there was a letter that you left me, and know that I read every letter, or every part of that letter, every word of the letter, or I was with you when you were writing that letter to me, because they can hear your thoughts. They can feel what you're feeling, right? Because they're energy. And when they say, like, especially at the time of passing, spirit is just reminding me to say that the hearing is the last thing to go. So if you've whispered words into your loved one's ear, if you gave them permission to go, that is acknowledged. They want to thank you for that. And I feel like that's something special that someone needed to hear today on this, because that's not part of my notes. That if you gave someone permission to go, they want you to know, thank you. Thank you for letting me go, because I could not have gone without that. So take that who you are, what that's for you. No, that's from my heart. So spirit always shows up for their own funeral. They are not at their graves. I really want you to know that they're not with their body. They are not with their ashes. They are with you. When you think about them, you bring them to you, and they hear you, they feel you, they will come. So it is not that they're, I think we often feel like we need to go to where they are. Like if we put their ashes in a tree, or we put, a bench in their name, or we put, that is for the living. We want a place to go to talk to them, because it feels good to our brain, maybe, or that we feel like that's where they are. And we feel closer to them when we're there, especially if their body is buried, in a cemetery. But every time I drive by a cemetery, I never see spirit there. Never, except when I was in New York. That was the only time that I saw spirit there, because that cemetery was very close to ground zero, of the Twin Tower collapse. And it was also a place where there was a lot of older folks that were there from the time of, like, the pilgrims coming across, on the Mayflower. That's like, I saw that kind of clothing, and then I saw Jewish and Catholic people being buried there, which I thought was like crazy pants, because normally they don't mix cultures or religions. And yeah, they had said that there was some Jewish people buried there. So I was like, oh, how would I know that? It was that I saw that, as they were standing about and talking to each other. So it was a bit of a, gathering place. I think it's a vortex of energy, to be honest, where, spirits can gather, or their transition point. So if you're not sure what that is, so there are places on this planet that are vortexes of energy. If I should do a whole other topic on this called ley lines. There are ley lines that crisscross the earth. They're magnetic lines, and where they crisscross each other, because there's ones that go horizontal, they're perpendicular to each other, so they crisscross at certain points. And some lines go, there's sort of a star of different lines that are intersecting, and that's considered a point of high energy on the planet. I'm seriously not making this up. This is not woo-hoo. This is actual science, that these lines exist. They can follow them. Birds follow them for migration. Where these lines intersect, there are historical, like Jerusalem is on one, Glastonbury is on one, the Vatican is on one. Like, so there was these places that they could feel had really strong energy, and they built things there that are, like, really religious usually, or things of note, during at these places. And there are also smaller vortexes around the world as well, and some vortexes are positive in energy, and some are negative in energy. So and some go up, into the sky, and some come down and ground us. So Maui is one that grounds us. The energy comes down into the earth. It's a sanctuary for healing the body. And Sedona is where the energy goes up. It's an example of a vortex of energy that goes up. So that's a lot of astral travel and aliens and these feeling of out of body experiences in Sedona. So, I digress a little bit, but it's, really interesting when you start to look at energy on this planet. We are energetic beings living this human experience in this energetic world that we only think exists in the 3D, right? So silly. We actually exist in, like, a multiple dimension space, but we're only available to the 3D experience, because that's what we can perceive. And you're meant to forget, right? You come here to forget, because then you can live in authenticity with the dichotomy, with the contrast of separation from true source. But you are true source. You are a reflection of the divine. You are a piece of God walking around in this flesh car that is your body. So, and take that for what you will. And, I think religion has really used that and manipulated that information, but it's really non-denominational. It's science, actually, right? But from a spiritual lens, you are love, and you are here to experience love. So, as I mentioned, spirits always showing up for their funeral. They're not at their graves. They're not with their ashes. They're with you. I often look at graveyards and see nobody. No spirits are ever in graveyards, unless someone is visiting. Then they're there with their person, but they brought them to the grave. They think they're going to the grave to say goodbye or to talk to their person, but really, it's actually just a sanctuary. It's a sacred space, and I think cemeteries are just sacred spaces where we go to honor our grief. That's really what it is. But your loved one doesn't live there. But it's interesting because it's our connection to their physical body that creates that, right? Notice this when someone in our family passed away and their ashes, were given back to the person, their loved one that was still remaining. And there's this real debate as to what should be done with it, right? And I actually chimed in and said, you can do whatever you want. There's no expectation for you to put it in the ground or put it in a niche or you can just have it with you. If that makes you feel good, put it with you and talk to it every day. Like, it's okay. It doesn't, there's no harm in that. You're not crazy. This is actually a really beautiful opportunity to heal grief in your time, like in a time that works for you. And then there was a debate in the family of dividing up the ashes, because someone wanted to put it in a locket, someone wanted to put it in a ring, perhaps. Like, they were sort of like wanting a piece of this person to be with them, which I think is really beautiful. Again, it's for the living to heal grief, right? And then there was this debate, which I had never thought about keeping the person whole. And I was like, do you think the crematorium gave you like every single ash of that person? I mean, do you think some of it's back there a little bit? And they were like, no, we don't want to talk about that or think about that. That again, there was this feeling of this person has to be kept whole because they're alive in their ashes in some way. And I just sort of really made a decision at that point for me. If my kids want to have a piece of my ashes, or my husband or friends or whatever, please do it. Let them feel me with them, because I am with them. When they're thinking about me or they're rubbing their ring, I'm there. I would be there with them. That's what we do. Spirit is like, oh, I can feel like she's thinking about me, sending her love and wanting to be part of the conversation or wanting to share that back. Now, as your spirit of your person integrates deeper and deeper into spirit, and they take on roles in spirit, because they're not just hanging about doing nothing all day. They can take on causes with like world peace, or they can, be with other soul family, or they can choose to reincarnate. But if they choose to reincarnate and come into another lifetime, their higher self still remains in spirit. So again, I've mentioned higher self in previous episodes, but I'll say it as an analogy with the old school bumper cars, right? So you are the bumper car in your flesh car in your body, and you are tethered into spirit with that electric pole that is in that grid, that attaches to the grid that's at the top of the bumper car's ride, right? There's this kind of electric mesh. I always looked up and going, if I touch that, will I electrocute myself? And the guy said yes. So the bumper car is tethered into that electric grid, and then you're driving your bumper car around and hitting other people and trying to hit people. I never really quite understood the point of that game. You don't get any points, right? Like, as a Virgo, like, give me the points. Show me if I'm doing well. So it's that tether into it's high self, right? You're tethered into spirit. You have that high self that's all knowing, it's all dimensional. So it's been all its reincarnation, all its identities, every lifetime you've lived is in that high self, right? And when we talk about Akashic records, if you've ever heard the term Akashic records, the idea behind the Akashic records is the records of all your lifetimes is held there. And the reason why you don't know about that, because if you knew who you were in previous lifetimes, you might feel a little differently about this lifetime. You were a villain in a previous lifetime. You probably been burned at the stake in a previous lifetime. You probably were a witch in a previous lifetime. If you're listening to this, you probably drowned in a previous lifetime. You probably had some very hard lives, and if you were to remember all of those, would you be able to live the life that you came here to live? And the answer is no. No. That's why you don't remember any of those lives. That's why when people say, I can go into the Akashic records, I'm a little bit skeptical of that because you're not meant to know them. But we can have inklings of previous lifetimes. We can have inklings of like, I know I can feel I was in ancient Greece. I can feel that had an incarnation in Japan. I had this wild lifetime that I had a glimpse of. It is, story for another time in terms of past lives, but there is a lot of evidence that shows that past lives are true. So in this, you're tethered into your high self. Your high self is always there and it holds all the lifetimes, right? Think of it as a prism, a diamond that has multi facets. And in this lifetime, you are only shining up one facet of this like 5,000 faceted diamond. So all those lifetimes are up there. So if you are then, reincarnate and you come back down in another, place in another body, that high self is still there. So if you were to do a reading or you were wanting to, contact your grandmother, that part of her would still be up there, even though she reincarnated. But what I feel is the energy is harder to contact. The energy is further away. It feels really high vibrational. And remember, we're in the third dimension. We're in a very low frequency state. So a density, we're in a low density state, not low frequency, but low density. And so it's hard to reach up to those high frequencies. And so I'll give the example of my friend Cody, who passed away at 45 before COVID. Fantastic human, amazingly spiritual man. And I could feel him around helping us, especially with our sons, which is so interesting. Many of us reported his support. And lately, I've been feeling him very far away. Like, I can feel when I think about him and talk about him, I can feel him, but he's very far away, like a little hard to touch. I can feel that he's there, but I don't know if I could touch him in terms of like hearing his thoughts. I used to be able to hear thoughts and stuff from him. I don't hear that anymore. And I was talking to a girlfriend about that recently. I'm like, "Do you think Cody is reincarnated? Because I can't feel him as much as I used to." And she's like, "Oh my God, I was thinking the same thing the other day. I can't feel him as much as I used to." And I was like, either he's moved into a really high service of trying to do something fantastic in the universe, or he's moved into an incarnation. So, something to think about. If you're feeling like I can't feel my loved one, like I used to feel my grandfather, my mom's dad, when I first started doing mediumship, and now he doesn't come into readings anymore. And I feel him, but again, I feel him far away. So it's like I know he's there, I know he's supporting me and he loves me, but I can't touch it like I used to. You know, like I can touch my grandmother. 100% comes around at night. She comes to my dreams. I feel her around. She comes into my mediumship classes. She's around a lot, so she's still, taken me on as her charge, if you will, or still has some things for me to learn. And I know I have things in my lifetime that are connected to her lifetime that I am still healing in myself. So I think she's taken that on as well to help her to move through some of her stuff too. So they don't just move on, y'all. Like they're still here connecting with you. And even if they do move on, that high self is still there. They're still loving you. That lifetime still existed and their high self is there to support you too. So they're not just out there by yourself. So love continues beyond the veil, and how the energy of that remembrance is intertwined with your life. When you are thinking about them, you call them close. And, those loved ones do hear your words. They feel your love. They are at their funerals. They're listening to all the stories. That is all real. If you feel them there, that's real. If you see a glimpse of them in the corner of your eye, that is real. And, a funeral is really a place of healing and support and coming together to connect and to maybe forgive, maybe to see a different version of the person you knew. I really love going to funerals. Again, that sounds so crazy to say, but it's because I get to see all the parts of this person that I might not have known in all their facets. My astrology mentor, God, I love her so much and I miss her every day. Her name was Chris McRae, and she was a pillar in the astrology world, in every association. She traveled around the world, and I got to meet her at 82. Oh, I can feel her with me. At 82, and she passed away at 92, and those 10 years I was a really big part of her life, but not in a way that like, she was very intensely private. She was an Aquarius, of course, astrologer Aquarius, and she was private with her personal life, but I just happened to always be there when something in her personal life was popping off. And so I knew about those things, and so I would talk to her about it, and I don't have a problem with, I don't feel bad, not that I don't feel bad. I have a way of doing it in a way that you understand that I'm there for you. I have zero judgment and I love you beyond. And so, yeah, I would do that with her, and just, talk to her about her family and what was happening with her personally. And so I became a friend, celebrated birthdays with her. And I was in her living room every week for 6 years learning astrology. And, it's not often nowadays that you get a real live mentor that gets to hold your hand and answer questions and be a guiding light and encourage you when you've lost your faith in yourself. And she died during COVID, unfortunately, by herself in an ER. And oh, this is hard. um she had a funeral. We had a funeral for her. I actually reached out to one of her closest friends in the astrology world, and I said, are you gonna have a funeral or something? And he said, absolutely. We will do a memorial. Stay in touch. I will let you know. And I said, I want to be there at that funeral. And I had a few pictures and stories to share. And he had known her like pretty much her whole astrology life. I had only come into her last 10 years. She'd been an astrologer for 50 years? 50 years, y'all. Like, this woman is a pillar. And, so we had her funeral online, and she always she had a birth name that she wouldn't tell me. I knew she had it came out, I don't know how it came out, but I knew she had a birth name that was not her chosen name, which is Chris is her chosen name, and she would refuse to tell me, and I'm like, "You can tell me, Chris. I won't tell anybody. I really am good at keeping secrets." And she's like, "No, Sheetal, I will take it to the grave." So they actually shared her real life name. I'm hearing her say, "Do not share it on this podcast. If you DM me, I'll tell you." No, no, she said don't, so I will honor that. But her birth name came out, in there, and I knew she was born to a really hardworking mom who gave her all of the supports, and her dad had passed away very early. So, and she had a brother who died in a motorcycle accident. So, like, there was all these things that I knew because she had told me those stories, but now I got to see all the pictures of these people. And she had a husband who predeceased her, who she loved, the love of her life. She never coupled it with anyone after his passing. She had pictures of him up all over her house, and she would talk about him all the time. And I knew at the time of her passing, she came to visit me, and she showed me she was with her husband. I miss her a lot. I often think if I have astrology questions, I wish I could just call her. And I can feel her beside me right now, putting her hand on my shoulder. But that funeral was fantastic because we were all online and I got to see her pictures. I took pictures of her pictures of her when she was much younger that I never got to see and know of her. I knew of her, her history. She told me about she was in television and film and she was a makeup artist, and then I got to see these pictures of her, and it was fantastic. It was just like I love her even more. That's what funerals do. They just bring a little bit of closure. So, at the next time that you go to a funeral, oh, I didn't know this was gonna take this turn, y'all. The next time you go to a funeral, I want you to look around and see if you can feel your loved one. Use the funeral for loving, for supporting, for taking care of yourself, and notice what the funeral does for you. It's not just something to attend. I attend every funeral that I can for my family, for my friends, for my loved ones, to hold the space, to be there as a support, to send energy. But I notice that spirit sends energy through the crowd as well to help heal. And all the loved ones come together to give us that blessing and that that healing and that love to help us carry through in the physical world because they remember how hard it was. They remember what it was like, when they were here. And they know it's not easy. So they support us 100% through our own healing. So I hope this has given you a different perspective. I hope this has opened your eyes to seeing funerals in a different way. It's not to say that you're not going to be sad. You are, of course. You're still going to hurt, depending on how this loved one interacted with you or how that you knew them. I mean, I only knew my mentor for 10 years. She is the reason why I'm an astrologer today, and I'm so blessed. I so love her so deeply. It doesn't change the fact that you're not gonna miss them or that that you feel sad about it, but it does change the way that you process, knowing that you're so loved and they're there with you and just even noticing, can you feel them? Can you see them? Do you think you can have a sense of where they might be in the room? Because they will be there. Sending you so much love if you are grieving the loss of someone close to you, or this has brought you back to funeral or funerals that you have attended and thinking about, I hope you feel like I felt that wave come through me, or I felt a hug, or I felt that person's hand on my shoulder. This is your permission to know that it was real. All right. Sending you so much love. Thank you for being here. And truly, if you think this could help someone else, please send this to them to help them just open their mind to what else was possible. Or if they're moving through some grief, that this can open their mind to the fact that the spirit world is truly here supporting and loving us every step of the way. Thank you, my friends. Be well, and I love you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Story of Spirit podcast. I hope you have found inspiration, support, and practical insights to help you align with your soul-led purpose and live a life that sets your soul on fire. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us to reach more listeners and continues to provide valuable content. I sincerely appreciate every share, and I know it is how most people find me. It is because caring people like you have shared me with them at the right and perfect time. For more resources, insights, and to connect with our community, please visit us at www.sheetalstory.com and follow us on Instagram at sheetalstory. Remember, your journey to a more aligned and vibrant life is just the beginning, and I am here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, stay aligned, stay inspired, and keep shining your beautiful light. This is Sheetal Story, signing off from the Story of Spirit podcast. Here's the legalese that's required by our lawyers. This podcast and the YouTube channel represents the opinions of Sheetal Story and her guests to the show. The content should not be taken as medical, psychological, or financial advice. This series is informational and entertainment purposes only. Because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional, your mental health dream team, your financial advisor, or anyone else that's an expert in the field in where you are thinking of making big choices in your life.